The rain hadn't stopped for hours. It poured from the heavens like a grief long held back, washing the streets clean of dust, pride, and secrets. In a quiet town where nothing much ever happened, tonight felt strangely different, as if the wind itself whispered that someone's life was about to change forever. Michael Jennings had just finished his last shift at the small auto repair garage he owned. He was a man of quiet habits and a reputation for being honest and dependable. Widowed for 6 years and with no children, his life revolved around routine, silence, and the occasional visit to his late wife's grave. But tonight, something interrupted the usual rhythm as he pulled his truck out of the shop, headlights cutting through the sheets of rain. His gaze caught something, a figure huddled near the edge of the woods just beyond the old train tracks. It was small, unmoving. He almost ignored it. People often took shelter there, but something about the figurite's stillness, its vulnerability, made him pause. Michael stopped the truck, rolled down the window, and called out, "You all right?" No answer. He parked, grabbed his raincoat, and jogged across the muddy lot. As he got closer, he saw it was a young woman, soaked to the bone, shivering violently, her arms clutched tight around her body. Her clothes were thin, torn in places, and her shoes, one was missing. Then she looked up, eyes wide, terrified. She didn't speak. She didn't move. "Hey." "It's all right," Michael said gently, crouching down. "I'm not gonna hurt you. You need help?" She opened her mouth, lips trembling. "Please." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please don't let them find me." Michael's heart pounded. He didn't know who they were, but fear like that didn't come from nothing. "They won't," he said quietly. "Come on, let's get you warm." She hesitated, then nodded. A room with a lock. Michael brought her to his modest house at the edge of town, a single-story home with creaky floors and a fireplace that hadn't been lit in months. "I'm not asking questions tonight," he said as he handed her a towel. "You can sleep in the guest room. Bathrooms through there. I'll leave dry clothes outside the door." She looked at him, unsure whether to trust. "I'm not the kind of man who hurts people," he added. She gave a small nod. Her lips tried to form thanks, but the words failed her. An hour later, she was asleep. Michael sat in his old chair by the fire, watching the flames, wondering what kind of storm this young girl had come from Mand if it had truly passed. In the light of day the next morning, she was still there, sitting at his kitchen table, nervously sipping tea from a chipped mug. She looked younger than he'd guessed, maybe 20, 22. She'd cleaned up, but her eyes still held shadows. He gave her space, waiting until she spoke. "My name's Lila," she said softly. Michael nodded. "I'm Michael." She played with the mug's handle. "Thank you. If you're not calling the police." He raised an eyebrow. "Why would I?" "'Cause I ran away," she said. "And people don't usually help girls like me." He didn't. Ask More just refilled her tea. But in the days that followed, Lila began to open up in small pieces, like fragile petals unfurling in sunlight. She told him her story not in one sitting, but scattered across many over toast. Through tears, in midnight whispers when the nightmares came. A past she couldn't outrun. Lila had grown up in a big city, a life of chaos, neglect, and abuse. Her mother died when she was 13. Her stepfather, well, that part she never fully said. But Michael understood enough to know it had been bad. At 16, she ended up in a shelter. At 17, she was placed in a youth rehabilitation home run by a man named Carson Webb. That name stuck with Michael for some reason. "It wasn't what it looked like," she said bitterly. "On paper, it was legal, but it was like a prison. They didn't let us have phones. If you tried to leave, they locked you in a room for days." Michael clenched his fists. "I finally got out," she said. "I was supposed to go into state housing, but someone found me. One of Carson's men. They said I belonged to them. That was when she ran. Through buses, back roads, and miles of walking. She ended up in Michael's town with a backpack, $5, and one good shoe. Trust is earned weeks past. Lila stayed. Michael didn't ask for much, just honesty, safety, and respect. She helped with chores, learned how to cook, and even began sketching again, something she hadn't done in years. He found her drawings on scraps of paper. Birds in flight, eyes watching from behind doors, a girl curled up under trees. They never said it. But something began to grow between them, not romantic, but something deeper. Like the bond between two broken souls who'd chosen to believe in each other. Then one day, the past came knocking. The man in the gray car. Michael noticed the car before Lila did. It was parked across the street from his shop. Gray, unmarked, windows tinted. And it had been there all morning when he went to approach. It sped off. The next day, it was back. Michael came home early and told Lila gently, "Did you ever tell anyone you were coming here?" "No," she said, fear returning to her eyes. "I never even knew this town existed. You sure?" She nodded. Michael checked the locks that night. Set up a camera near the driveway. Old instincts kicking in, the kind he hadn't used since his military days. Long buried under years of wrenching bolts and tuning engines. A safe place becomes a target hit. Happened 3 nights later. They came around 2 a.m., a knock at the door. Not urgent, not polite, just calculated. Michael didn't answer. He looked at Lila, who was already pale and trembling. Then a voice. "Lila, you need to come with us. It's time to come home." She shook her head furiously, tears streaming. "No, no. Please don't let them take me, Michael. Please." He walked to the door, heart pounding. "I'm calling the sheriff," he said through the wood. "No need for that," the voice replied. "We've got paperwork. You're harboring a runaway." Michael didn't care. He wasn't about to hand her over to a system that had already failed her once. Escape plan that night? They left. Michael didn't tell anyone. Not his neighbors. Not even his best friend at the diner. He packed a small bag, took some savings, and drove north. Lila slept curled up in the truck's back seat. Every few hours, she'd wake with a start, looking around as if she'd dreamed the whole thing. "Where are we going?" she asked once. "Somewhere safe," he replied. By sunrise, they crossed state lines. The world looked different, lighter, freer, but Michael knew freedom always came with a price. And someone somewhere still thought Lila was theirs to be. Continued in part to Michael and Lila drove for 2 days straight, stopping only for fuel, food, and short naps in rest areas tucked behind tall trees. They didn't talk much during those first hours. There wasn't much to say. The silence between them wasn't empty, though. It was sacred, like a fragile glass they were both afraid to drop. Eventually, they crossed into a remote town in the northern highlands, tucked between thick pine forests and winding rivers. It was the kind of place you wouldn't find unless you were looking for a tan. Even then, you'd still miss the turn if you blinked. They rented a tiny cabin on the edge of town under a different name. Michael went by John now, and Lila became Emma. No one questioned them. In places like this, people respected privacy, and gossip was considered a social sin. For the first time in months, Lila slept a full night without waking up screaming. Rebuilding what was broken, Michael found a job at a local lumberyard. The work was hard and paid little, but it was honest. He liked that. Lila, meanwhile, started volunteering at the town's animal shelter. At first, she just cleaned kennels, but soon she was trusted with more. She had a special way with animals. Dogs who wouldn't let anyone near them would lay their heads in her lap. Cats would curl around her legs like they'd known her forever. "You've got a healer's heart," the shelter owner once told her. Lila smiled for the first time in A long while, but peace has a price. 3 months passed. Lila stopped jumping at loud noises. She started wearing color against soft blues and earthy greens. Her drawings became brighter. Wildflowers, oceans, smiling children. Michael watched her transform with quiet pride. Then one evening, while Michael was chopping wood behind the cabin, a sleek black SUV rolled slowly down the gravel road. Stopping just short of the property line, he froze. The vehicle idled for a few seconds. Then, without a sound, backed away and disappeared into the trees. Michael didn't tell Lila, but that night, stayed awake, shotgun across his lap, eyes on the window. The ghost returns a week later. Lila received a letter. No stamp, no address. Just her real name scrawled across the front. Inside were 4 words, typed on plain paper. You can't run forever. She dropped it like it burned. Michael called a friend in a neighboring city, a private investigator he'd served with back in the Army. The friend dug around and confirmed their worst fear. Carson Webb was expanding his rehabilitation program. Across state lines, more funding, more connections. More ways to make girls like Lila disappear legally. He's not just a predator, the Pie said. He's a businessman. Fight or flight, Michael gave Lila a choice. We can run again, he said. Or, we take him down. Lila stared at the fire. Her fingers trembled around her mug. I'm tired of running, she whispered. But I don't know if I'm strong enough to fight. Michael reached across the table, his voice low. You don't have to be strong. You just have to be brave. She looked at him, eyes wide and wet. Will you help me? Always. The plan. They spent the next 3 weeks gathering information. Lila gave statements, shared names, recalled the layout of the home, and remembered how girls were.